Attention!
Welcome to the Film Mages Podcast, where the popcorn is our ammunition, the couch is our foxhole, and the cinema is our place of worship.
Now let me see your war face! Ah!
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Oh, how we all doing?
Oh my God, so good. Mick, how are you?
How are you, Mick?
Oh my God, where is he?
Oh, where the fuck is Mick?
Where is that wonderfully grating voice that I hear every week? Where has it gone?
Welcome to the Film Majors. I'm Zach.
I'm Alexis. But where is Mick?
Mick is lost at sea, I would assume.
He is.
It's giving Castaway.
Who do we have with us today?
Yeah, it's me, Edwin. I have crawled my way back onto the podcast after more than a year since
more than
Zach
a year
banished me.
I just like to keep.
Yeah,
you didn't get banished.
I was banned. I didn't get to come talk about Ravenous. I didn't get to come talk about Alien.
It just felt like it was going to be a little too soon on Ravenous.
Insult after insult.
Wow.
But
well,
I
I'm
apparently
sorry.
have no pride because I'm here now, so.
That is true. You are shameless. What's going on, Edwin?
Well, I'm struggling through the first week back in the third year of my PhD program, where I do not study film, but I do study entomology, which I guess is why I'm relevant to this episode.
Interesting. Perhaps will come up later. We will see.
People can read the episode title.
It's not
like a mystery.
Yeah, no, somebody decided to just willy-nilly pick on an episode. They didn't read anything, and that's what this bit is for.
Sure, yeah, I guess. I feel like, in terms of, the show's future, maybe it's good to mention the movie we're going to be talking about up top.
Okay, you're not going to start doing, mystery box episodes?
That'll help with the SEO is not putting the movie title in the show. Well, speaking of movies, Edwin, have you seen any?
Ever?
Recently? Go to hell.
Yeah, no, this is the first one I've seen, and
wow.
It's a pretty interesting.
That's gonna make the big topic so difficult.
It's gonna make it pretty hard. Yeah.
Boy.
I have sort of got a head start on my customary attempt to watch 31 new horror movies in October, because this October is going to be hellaciously busy for me. So I started early in September while I was sick. So recently I've watched a number of horror movies I'd never seen before. One of which, a number of which are pretty recent. So I don't know if you've heard of Exuma.
Mick really liked Exuma. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
Wow, it'd be nice if he was here.
Yeah, I could have a wonderful chat with Mick about that.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, so that's a one that was released this year. That's a Korean exorcism, possession, shamanism type movie.
Ooh, we love those.
Yeah, I mean, it does have some commonalities that come up with The Wailing, which when you get to kind of the twist point of the movie is, I don't know, it went in a direction I wasn't expecting but probably should have been. But I enjoyed that one quite a bit. Would recommend.
Nice.
I saw In Fabric, which I think was the most exciting new horror movie, horror-ish, whatever. I cast a wide net with my definition of horror, but that one was really unique. It's directed by Peter Strickland, who also did the Barbarian Sound Studio and Duke of Burgundy, which are two other movies.
Barbarian Sound Studio has been on my list for a long time. I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's probably on my list because I told you to watch it when I watched it back in like high school.
That is correct.
But yeah, that's a much more sort of like art housey one, but it's about a cursed dress that causes misfortune and disaster to befall those who wear it. So I'm counting it as horror.
Yeah, I like it.
That one was very interesting. And The Substance, which I think you also recently watched.
I did see The Substance last weekend. What did you think of The Substance? I feel like this is a good episode to talk about The Substance on.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm still sort of digesting it. Yeah. Maybe I'm digesting The Substance.
Yeah. Slurping it down.
Yeah. I think the performances were very strong, and it's an exciting role for Demi Moore to take in particular.
She's really fucking good in it. I really like Demi Moore in that movie.
Yeah, like it's a pretty big departure from other stuff that I've seen her in, so I thought that was really fun to see her do. But I don't know. I sort of object to the characterization of it as a Cronenberg-esque movie for some particular reasons. But,
I feel like it has more a movie that I believe Mick talked about on our last episode. Yeah, it has more society energy in sort of what it's critiquing, and I feel like in kind of how like ham-fisted it is. I feel like David Cronenberg is a more subtle filmmaker.
I think it's much more moralistic than any Cronenberg movie is that I've seen.
Yeah. But I generally liked The Substance. I thought it, I feel like Mick kind of set me up for failure because he was like, it's this year's Barbarian, and I'm like, no, it's not. It doesn't have Barbarian level juice. But it is fun. It's a great movie to see with a crowd. My audience was just fucking losing it.
I saw it with a small.
Maybe that's kind of what's Barbarian about it, because Barbarian is more fun to see with a crowd.
I can see that.
I saw it with a pretty small group, but two of the people there were like an elderly couple, and at certain parts of the movie I was kind of like, are they gonna like hate this? Are they gonna be offended? But by the time I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but sort of toward the climax where there is the confrontation between our sort of twin leads, they were like cheering. They were like, yeah, get her. Like,
go off.
I'm glad.
Go
off.
No. Well, that's, I thought it was a fun watch. Alexis, have you seen anything lately, film-wise?
I have. So I think I'll start with movies that maybe don't count as me having seen them recently, because I kind of half watched them. I went to Oogie Boogie Bash at California Adventure this last week. Okay. I received a badge for best costume.
Proud of you.
You know, just subtle flex, me as a cat.
Glad you're entering your furry era. This is good.
Yes, we're circling back to our Balto episode where we had a discussion about furries.
One of the greatest episodes, also.
My most heavily researched episode.
Yes.
I've been meaning to watch Togo one of these
days. Great film.
To give that good boy his dues.
You're goddamn right.
So I kind of half watched the live action Little Mermaid and Hercules while we were like getting ready for our 2 days of like Disneyland / California Adventure. But I did rewatched The Last 5 Years, which is it's a movie adaptation of an off-Broadway musical by Jason Robert Brown. But the guy who directed The Last 5 Years, his name is like Richard LaGravenese.
Totally.
I probably fucked that up, but whatever. I'm looking at some of his movies that he's done, like Freedom Riders and P.S. I Love You and Beautiful Creatures, and I'm just like, there's nothing like in there that's like was particularly like a really, really well done movie. P.S. I Love You is probably the stronger one.
Yeah, P.S. I Love You is
maybe
solid.
Maybe Freedom Riders a little bit. But The Last 5 Years, there's just, I think it's just, maybe it's just better as a stage production. I mean, Jeremy Jordan's in it, and he's like a fucking like fantastic like Broadway person, and he's like, I feel like he's great in it. I'm not 100% sure I love Anna Kendrick in it, but I don't know if it's like her not
don't tell our dad that.
Oh, does he love
the number one Pitch Perfect fan in the world?
Yeah.
Okay, I love Pitch Perfect. Okay, but I only am saying that I've listened to like the off Broadway cast albums, and the Anna Kendrick has like a really beautiful and clear voice. It's like crystal clear, and obviously she got chosen for the movie because she's like a very big name draw. And I don't know if this was more of like a director thing, but I feel like in some key scenes, there's just like not a lot happening emotionally on her face. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gets in the way of me like enjoying it as much as I did the first time I watched it, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The first time I watched it, I was like obsessed. But you know, that's what going to like do actual music shit will do to you. It ruins shit. It's like the Phantom of the Opera is like kind of ruined for me ever since I started doing like when I started doing like actual like opera. And then there was this movie that's been like trending on TikTok called Dinner in America.
Okay.
And yeah, because there's like a really catchy song in it, and your homie Kyle, what's his name?
Oh, Kyle Gallner.
Kyle Gallner is in it.
Of Smile fame.
And,
I also watched Smile.
Of Smile fame.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said it.
Wait, who is he in Smile?
He's the same guy who's in Strange Darling. He's the cop guy in Smile.
Oh, you're right. Yes. He's also in The Passenger.
Okay. Haven't seen that.
It's fine. You know, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that, like, you know, it's always interesting when things, like, go viral on TikTok because, you know, so many people are like, oh, my God, I loved it so much. And then you watch it and you're just like, well, there's, like, one scene at the very beginning where there's just, like, so many slurs happening in the script. And I'm just like this, like, white family is just, like, clearly they're, like, kind of low-key awful people, right? But like there's just slurs happening left and right, and I was like, I don't know about this. And then they use the R slur like multiple times to talk about like one of our main characters, you know, because she's clearly different. I don't know, she seems like she's probably like on the spectrum somehow or something. I mean, I liked her, but yeah, it took it to like kind of like the halfway point. Yeah, there was just like, you know, like, I don't know, like boys from like, I don't know, like high school that were like calling her the R slur on the bus, and then they're just like, and she's like an adult, you know, and these are like clearly like teenagers that are just like being shitty, you know, and they're like, oh, can we go fuck you, you R slur, you know, and yeah, they're crazy. Anyways, so basically Kyle Gallner's character is like this like punk kind of rock kind of guy. He's kind of awful too. He's kind of like a pyromaniac a little bit. Like at the very beginning, he like sets a fire in some bushes in somebody's house.
Sounds cool so far.
Anyways.
I like him.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting first 30 minutes of the movie. The movie's only like an hour and 45. But like kind of once him and this girl like meet while he's like kind of hiding from the cops, and then he goes and like stays at her house with her parents and introduces like her parents and her brother who's adopted, which he also drops that knowledge at like the dinner table, and the kid didn't know that he was adopted. And then he gives the kid like weed for the first time. I don't know. And then like there's this scene where like the parents also accidentally tried some brownies. Like once the kid gets like weed, he finally loosens up, and he's just like finally gets a girlfriend and like ends up giving his parents pot brownies, and nobody's wearing pants in the house. I don't know. It was a very weird movie.
Well, if we're talking about very weird movies.
Okay, here you go, Zach.
I just got back from Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis.
Don't say anything because I'm trying to go see that.
I'm not going to say anything about anything that happens in the film.
I don't care if it's a clusterfuck.
I really liked it.
Really? Okay, I'm very curious.
I don't know if anyone else will. My audience,
for you.
My audience clapped at the end and were laughing, but I think mostly at the movie.
Wow, where'd Alexis go?
There was noise. There was noise in Alexis.
There was like a ghostly voice.
Like all over the audio is them watching their movie in the front room.
Okay.
But yeah, it is like truly one of the most deranged things I've ever seen. It really feels like no one told him no.
You know, but it seems like a lot of people have tried to.
Yeah, but they couldn't
like a lot of
fucking do
critics
shit.
They did for like 20 years, right?
Yes. And then he said, "No one can stop me. I have my wine money." The first thing that I thought, having walked out of the theater, was there was a comment George Lucas made about how like
was it about white slavery?
No, it was it was
What?
Yeah, these
white
slavers. The
slavers.
George Lucas thing of like him having to sell Star Wars was quote like white slavery, which like no it isn't,
Shut the
George, and
fuck
also
up.
why specify white? I don't
George, you didn't
understand.
need to say that.
What? There's no such thing as white
I
slavery.
know, it's like
White
anyway.
slavery. No, it
Sorry.
was George Lucas was like, once I'm done with Star Wars, I'm going to make weird art movies that no one sees. And I feel like he put a lot of that energy into the prequels, which are very weird, like studio movies. Like those feel like movies made by a guy who no one is telling him no as long as he makes a Star Wars. So he's putting all of his like political commentary and like weird technological stuff he wants to mess with in there. This feels like that if he was not at all burdened with making a Star Wars. This feels like I understand why George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola are like best buddies, because this feels
Well, they were like going to school at the same time. That's why they're best buddies.
yeah, and throughout their careers have like helped one another out. Coppola got American Graffiti made. Lucas got Coppola on Tucker, A Man and His Dream, I think, when he was kind of in a slump after One from the Heart.
Yeah, let me plug What Went Wrong one more time, because their
Stop
episode on
plugging
Star Wars,
another
A
show.
New Hope.
Yeah, close out of this episode.
So good,
now.
and pretty much
Suck
all of this
their
information that
bat.
Zach is saying can be found there. And
Boo.
yeah,
Boo. Yeah, it's just like it is. I just like it's very messy. It's a huge mess, but it's also kind of beautiful and very funny, like half and half intentionally and maybe unintentionally. It's
From what you were...
did I hear?
Oh, sorry.
Did I? Sorry. Did I hear right that there's supposed to be like some theaters that are showing like a live?
Yes, I'm sad.
Section of this
so
movie?
there's a point where there's an interview that they have the dialogue recorded, but some screenings were doing like Adam Driver gets asked a question and they were there are some screenings where that question is asked by a live performer. I don't think it's happening at very many theaters. It might have only been happening like during the...
I read like 20 markets, so I think that means only like 20 cities.
Yes, I'm sure there's screenings where they've done that in LA, but
You just haven't been to them.
it wasn't. Oh, where is?
Is there like an explanation as to why they...
For which? For what? For what part of it?
For having like a live...
There
speaking
isn't
response?
an explanation as to why for any of it.
Okay.
Coppola just does whatever the fuck he wants.
He's in his
That's
fucking
what it
bag.
is.
I just like I had a fun. If anyone like, it's a movie that you can like criticize to fucking death. Like, and if you come to me with a criticism of this movie, I don't care. You're right, but I don't care. I had so much fun. I was never bored.
I'm really, really, really excited to see it. I'm trying my best to fit in some movies on the 3 days that I have off this week from the theater.
I would prioritize Megalopolis.
Yeah, I've actually like I'm so busy now that I've actually started scheduling into my calendar the movies that are going to be showing during my free time so that each day I can choose which one that I want to go see.
Nice.
You know?
Smart.
Depending on like what I'm making my priority that day. So yeah, is this what adulting is as a moviegoer?
Maybe.
Yeah,
it might be.
Know. If you only watch movies that were like released before like 1996, you don't have these problems.
This is true. If
Well,
you don't do a like podcast that somewhat talks about contemporary film releases.
If you aren't forced to come up with a list of your top 10 films and like talk about the Oscars every year, then you're free to just see like forced
not
by
all of
by
us
Zach.
could be doing something productive like doing a PhD in entomology, you know?
Listen, I'm glad we're talking about this because when we have a dialogue, that basically is a utopia. Megalopolis. I'm America's #1 Megalopolis head. I'm all in.
That's great. Ever since it premiered, like I watched the video of like when it premiered and like everybody's like different like kind of reactions to it, and it was so divisive that I was like, oh, I have to see this movie like 110%. Like obviously I was already sad because it was like, oh, it's a Coppola movie. He's been trying to get it made for 20 years. Like I gotta at least go check it out, right? But then like, you know, it's so polarizing that I'm like, I have
it's got your boy, Alexis.
Also, Adam Driver.
It's got your boy.
I know.
He's all over this thing.
I want to see his big meaty hands on the screen.
You are going to see a lot of him.
God, I feel like I haven't talked about his hands for a few
I feel
months.
like he hasn't come up in a while, but let me tell you, he's coming back in a big way.
Yay. I do like it when he comes back in a big way.
Oh boy, well then you're gonna love the film Megalopolis. Well, that's I guess I've seen a few other things. I saw A Different Man, which I thought was good, and I saw the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, which
the first one?
Yes, 10 out of 10, great comedy. Humboldt State's proudest alumni.
Truly.
Yeah, and you know it's good if it can appeal to someone who was banned from watching the SpongeBob cartoon growing up, like both me and Zach were.
Yeah, we didn't watch SpongeBob.
Why were you guys banned from watching
I think
that?
my mom thought it was annoying and that it would make us dumber, which I don't know.
Well,
I mean, we got dumb in other ways, so we found a way.
We could
without
have seen SpongeBob and been the same level of dumb.
Yeah, and then we would understand all the
internet
memes that are popular.
Yeah. The internet's a real brain rotting place, and we grew up with it. So
listen, it's just good, clean comedy, and I enjoyed it.
I saw a new release.
What did you see?
I saw The Wild Robot.
Oh, how was that?
You need to go see it. It is literally so precious and cute and wholesome, and it's at least in my top 3
like
right now.
Megalopolis,
like movies
exactly
of the entire
like
year.
Megalopolis. Everything you're saying, it applies to the Megalopolis as well. It's wholesome. It's charming.
You know,
it's in my top 3 of the year.
And I cried 5 times. To be honest, I kind of started losing track. It could have been 6, but for sure 5. And I went with my nephew, who's 9 years old, and I don't know if there's anything that's kind of gives me more of a deeper joy. At least I found out recently, than hearing him giggle next to me while watching a new release like movie in theaters, because I'm like, I feel like, you know, how like going to see movies when you were a kid, like some of them were kind of like core memories, you know?
No, don't know anything
like,
about
sometimes,
that.
Do you guys not go see new movies
All
in
the
theaters?
time. How do you think I got like this?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Hey, I'm autistic. I can't tell when you're not being for real. Yeah, no, it was really cute. I also noticed that like I could see him out of the corner of my eye, like while I was starting to like cry on different parts, that he was like looking at me, and I think it's because he was starting to cry, and I think he was checking to see if I was also crying. So it was really cute. And Pedro Pascal plays the fox in it, and loved it. The voice acting was really good. It had a really good message, and I feel like this is just like a really big win for DreamWorks Animation that they haven't necessarily like maybe had.
What style?
In a while.
What style of animation is it?
Great question.
Just like broadly, like 2D, 3D, stop motion,
3D
like,
and.
It's 3D.
like computer animation.
I feel like having seen the trailers for the Wild Robot, I feel like the effect of the Spider-Verse movies on American animation has been such a net positive because the Wild Robot does not look like
beautiful color scheme to it. Like everything's like very vibrant, and the motion in it is really fluid and good. And I don't know, it was just really fucking sweet, and I was just such a fucking sap for it, and I'm definitely gonna buy that shit on DVD, like, eventually. It's so fucking cute. Big recommend.
Yeah, I think that'll probably be the first, like, new kids release that I see this year, because that movie does, like, visually, it kind of gave me like Brad Bird vibes, which I feel like is like a really big like compliment for like an animated movie. Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think anytime that there's like, I think I did actually take like a couple notes while like at the very beginning. Inanimate objects being sad makes me sad, and this all began with the Island of Misfit Toys in the Rudolph like stop motion thing. You know, the Island of Misfit Toys. Rankin Bass.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When they're all sad because nobody wants them. And I'm like, anytime something that's, like, not technically real in real life, like, you know, like a robot or something, anytime they, like, start to have, like, feelings about not being wanted, I get deeply sad inside. Yeah. So this movie made me cry, like, immediately. That's a
guy. That's a friend.
Yeah, I do like when character designers kind of push, like, what is the minimum level of, like, being a guy that a character has to be for us to relate to it? Like, how much of a face does it have to have?
Yeah, R2-D2, he's just a little trash can, but he's got a dot on him, so he's your buddy.
He has a dot, he beeps and boops. That's a guy.
That's a fucking guy right there.
Yeah, he's speaking something we don't know, but somebody does.
Okay, movie that you don't really like, Edwin, but I feel like you were a fan of this aspect. Tars in Interstellar.
Yeah,
that's a guy.
The robot was my favorite part of.
He is
he is
just a rectangle. He is, but he turns his humor. He has his humor setting.
Yeah.
Well, nice. I will probably check that out. Do we have anything else?
In terms of new watches?
Just, in general.
No, actually, can I just make a note about Dinner in America? Because I didn't technically get to finish. But the first half was really, I don't know, somewhat off-putting. But, once they stopped hitting us with the R slur all the time, it was actually kind of a really sweet romance at some point, when he started being less psychopathic, So, I don't know if I would, necessarily recommend the movie, but I ended up quite liking it, and I threw the song that was in the movie on my Spotify playlist, so,
So you would,
it's a mixed bag, but...
You would recommend the song from the movie, if not the movie?
I would.
Okay.
I would.
So just check out the part that was decontextualized and circulated on TikTok.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Nice.
And yeah, I'll just say, my last thing for this segment, John Voight does deliver the line, "How do you like my boner?" In the film Megalopolis.
Great. That's exactly what I want to hear from John Voight, let me tell you.
Nobody's doing it like Francis. Nobody is doing it like him. Also, the title card looks like the title card from Dracula. Rules.
I guess because John Voight is so old, I kind of picture it as being like the old-timey like Batman comic meaning a boner where it's like a mistake.
It's not. I can tell you right now.
But I guess that's just wishful thinking on my part because I don't want to hear about his boner.
You're gonna. All right. Well, I think we should hop out of what's going on. And we're at our first big topic. We're so fucking back.
The movies are back, baby.
It's spooky season. We're here. My favorite fucking month. We all love it.
Are you putting like a little audio something file for spooky season?
Yeah, it comes right after I say spooky season.
Oh, yeah, like little.
What is it?
Ghosts and
Is it like a
goblins,
scream or something? Do
rattling
I have to watch the
chains.
episode to find out?
You might have to listen to the show to
Damn
find
it!
out.
I'm here already.
Too bad.
You know what, Zach? It's very fortuitous because just today I received a sinister piece of mail. A few weeks ago, Zach asked me, "What is your mailing address?" And I was like, afraid and threatened because Zach has never sent me mail. Not even a birthday card. Thanks, Zach.
I'm sorry.
For context for listeners, Zach is my brother. But so I was suspicious and afraid. And I opened an unmarked piece of mail, and it was a print copy of Zach's spooky season watch list.
Oh my god, that is so precious. How come I didn't get one, Zach?
Yeah, you're not on the list. You're not on the exclusive list
fuck?
of the
I'm
mail
not on your
copy.
mailing list? I don't live in LA. You didn't even email it to me.
I should have mailed it to you. It was on our last episode
I
that you
have a
didn't listen
birthday
to.
present for you in the house right now.
Oh man,
You're fired.
Don't say that.
You're fired. No, I'm gonna forget it. I'm gonna keep this button down for myself.
Oh. Of course it's a fucking button. I knew it was a button down. You are my number one supplier of Hawaiian button downs.
Every time I find a good one with good fabric, I'm just like, this is for Zach. It's for his Christmas present or his birthday present this year to keep the bit going and alive.
Well,
this
I'm
is the third year in a
excited.
row that I've done it.
We're into our first big topic, and there was some discussion as to what the big topic should be, and I think we're going to go with what are some of film's most upsetting injuries? What makes
I didn't prepare for this one at all.
Okay, we can talk about the other one.
I know exactly what I'll say.
Okay,
well then great. Never mind. We're talking about this. Edwin, what do you feel are some of film's most upsetting injuries?
Right, well, I think when you pitched this to me, you described it as horror's most upsetting injuries, which is a little bit more specific. And I was kind of interested that this movie evoked that topic for you, which is why I find this to be an interesting topic, because I feel like it's an extremely subjective and extremely personal question and way to relate to movies, and particularly in the horror genre, of what things actually get to you and what things bother you the most. Because for me, I don't know. Can we say what the title of the movie is in this episode?
No, we can't.
Okay.
No.
The movie that this episode is about, for me, does not have that kind of extremely deep yuck factor or ouch factor. It has some parts that are gross, but this wouldn't necessarily be the topic that would come to mind for me. but that's kind of why I'm glad that we went with it, because I feel like it's a way to learn stuff about each other. So some things I found thinking about, like, what things in horror do I find very viscerally upsetting and unpleasant to watch. The first that kind of jumped out was being attacked with scissors. I don't know why scissors are so much more of an upsetting weapon to be injured by than a knife, even though it's just kind of two knives that pivot. But things like I don't know if either of you have seen Inside. It's a new French Extremity movie.
No.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
You should watch it. I think you'd like it a lot,
it's
Zach.
on my list.
But there is
a
lot of scissor stuff in it, including someone's hand coming out of a door and being pinned to a wall by a big pair of shears. So that one, and also obviously Antichrist by recent subject of a podcast episode, director Lars von Trier, has like an insanely gnarly scissor self-mutilation incident. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But
that one's really bad.
Yeah, and they put a lot of work into making it extremely realistic. So thanks, Lars. I don't know if we were doing a roundtable on...
That guy's got problems. Alexis, what troubles you? That one, I hadn't thought about that one. That one's so bad.
There's some other pretty rough ones in Antichrist, but, like, I don't know. The scissors factor is what really tips it over for me, I think.
So, in 13 Ghosts... at the very end. I always bring out 13 Ghosts for some reason.
You love 13 Ghosts.
I love 13 Ghosts. Favorite B horror movie, like
that. I feel like my top 5. That and Ghost Ship are cut from the exact same fucking cloth.
I think they kind of came out around the same time.
I literally think they're produced by the same studio.
They are produced by the same studio, so they are in fact cut from the exact same brain cloth. But so at the very end, I think her name is Natasha or something like that, but it's the girl who's kind of the mastermind / side chick of the guy who's actually the mastermind of this whole like plot, right? And basically she says something like, "Oh, Cyrus, you know, like, aren't I coming with you?" And he's like, "Nah, bitch, I actually don't fucking care about you at all, and I'm gonna leave you here to die." And then he does, in fact, leave her there to die, and she gets, like, pinned between two walls and crushed to death, and you can kind of see, like, her, like, head being, like, slowly crushed in between these two, like, glass panes. The sound of bones slowly crunching has always just, like, it grinds my gears. Like,
grind your bones.
To make
it does
their
grind
bread.
your bones. And so it's like that scene in 13 Ghosts, as well as there's a very similar scene in one of the, I think it's Saw 5 maybe, where he also gets crushed. I don't know, any movie where they like literally like snap somebody's bones, I get the heebie-jeebies in like an immediate way. But, and this probably says a lot about my brain, because I brought it up a lot in Sleepaway Camp. that fucking scene where she pours battery acid on somebody is one of my favorite deaths. Don't know exactly what that says about me, but that is
I feel like that
horrific.
guy deserved it.
Well, there's no bones breaking.
I think he did
it's
deserve
a different situation.
Wait, what?
There's no bones being crunched,
breaking.
so it's fine.
Yeah, there's no bones being crunched.
Yeah,
it's
throwing-
definitely like gross,
Yeah.
but it's like gross in a way that I like, you know? But the sound of like bones snapping or like crunching has always just like, oh,
Have you ever
know?
broken a bone?
I've never broken a
Me
bone.
neither.
Maybe it's just like a deep-seated fear.
Yeah.
I've fractured a bone.
Just like a toe, though, right?
No, I fractured my wrist in high school.
Oh, right, yeah.
I've like skinned my, like I've fallen so much and like sprained my right ankle like a bunch of times, and I've skinned like my knees and like my foot like a few times, like,
Okay.
but I've never broken anything.
This is what is this cat up I'm glad you mentioned ankles. One that it's just kind of always upset me is Hostel.
Wait, which part of Hostel?
The first guy who dies in Hostel, his Achilles get cut, and he's like in a chair, and he gets up, and he like tries to take a step, and his foot like separates and then squishes back down. He falls down. That really fucked me up. I really hate that. Yes, Alexis.
Yes, I like to raise my hand when we're on Zoom so that I can be called upon.
But Zach was looking away like there was trouble in the back of the classroom, so you were left unanswered. Yeah.
I'm a big rule follower.
Yes, class.
So there's a movie called The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Okay. And in that movie, the main character, the blonde woman who's crazy, who's trying to like steal this woman's baby because hers died, she cuts, I think, the husband's Achilles heel when he's coming down the stairs. And that always gave me the heebie-jeebies. And so did in Child's Play 2. Chucky also cuts the Achilles heels of, I think it's like the father character, the foster father or whatever of Andy in that movie.
There's a great ankle attack scene in Pet Sematary as well. I like when there's like a little tiny child. That Chucky made me think of that because it's like a little child zombie who's like going for your feet and ankles.
Yeah.
That whole scene where that kid dies, like, and you don't see
the
it,
child
you know,
is
but
so
like
crazy in that movie.
It's like all you see is the shoe go fly. Like you see the semi come, and then you just see a shoe go flying, and like honestly, so traumatizing. My mom was always telling us this story about like whenever we would be walking and we would like be on a sidewalk or something. My mom liked to parent by fear. Like we would be on the sidewalk and we'd be like too close to kind of the edge. She'd be like, did you know that this one time a semi came up on the side of the sidewalk and it actually took a child underneath its wheels and they didn't find out for 3 blocks that it was dragging a child under its wheels? And I was like, oh, you know. But you know how many times I fucking heard that story as a kid?
Jesus.
So like
for the record, a semi did push a car up onto the sidewalk one time when Edwin and I were walking to school, and Edwin pulled me out of the way.
It's true. It almost happened to Zach. Yeah.
No.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't be here. Yeah. I wouldn't be here podcasting if Edwin hadn't been more heads up than I was being.
I guess I understand why they're on your mailing list and I'm not. Then.
Yeah, you gotta spare my life.
You gotta save your life.
Yes, and it's a lot harder to pull me around now. So you're really gonna have to put in the work. Another one. For some reason, hand stuff is always really upsetting to me, and I have never really injured either of my hands that badly. But the bit in Green Room. Yeah. Where Anton Yelchin is like trying to keep the gun and he's like fighting with the Nazis and he pulls his arm back in. This is like maybe tenuously a horror movie, but it's probably going to be on my Spooktober list at some point.
Horror scene, though.
Yeah, he pulls his hand back in and it is like his wrist is shredded and he has to like duct tape. Yeah, he has to like duct tape his hand back on. Yeah, and it's just fucked up for the rest of the movie.
Let me tell you, if you found that scene to be very upsetting, watch Inside, and you'll be upset by a similar incident. Hand injuries are rough. Other ones I had were degloving injuries, where like the skin gets stripped from your hand and arm. Gerald's game, but also Castle Freak has a near degloving injury where the freak is like slipping out of manacles and like tearing up his own skin to escape.
Classic freak behavior.
It's classic freak behavior, but it's like, those ones are so rough. I think it also has that factor of like being trapped and doing something to yourself that is like horribly damaging because you like have such a strong survival instinct. So I don't know. I think there's that element of like survival horror not just being like the problems you could encounter, but also the things that you could do that you didn't know you were capable of to overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, that's a really good pull. Degloving is really bad. And, I think I also have to shout out, even though this like wasn't as painful an injury as I thought it would be when I experienced it. But teeth stuff has become bad for me in recent years. I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but my 2 front teeth are fake because they got smashed out of my head by a Frisbee at Ultimate Frisbee practice in college. So since then, teeth stuff has been rough for me. A Cure for Wellness, I feel like, has a pretty memorable tooth injury. That's really kind of the big one. But there's also some stuff in today's film that is pretty troubling. Alexis, you have something?
Before we get into this, I will say that in one of the Final Destination movies, I want to say it was 4, maybe it was 5, but there's a scene with like oh my god, why can't I think of this? Oh, a lawnmower, where like a rock goes into a lawnmower and then it just like hits somebody like through the eye or like the skull or something because it gets like rocket launched. My dad's a gardener, so like he's very often had like when I needed money as a kid in the summer, I went and worked with my dad, and this movie made me like terrified of fucking lawnmowers. Very disturbing.
Okay.
I mean, we want to talk lawnmowers
and
for
I
your
hate
brain
things
dead.
with fingernails.
Fingernails are rough. Another tooth thing, though, tooth and mouth thing, biting down on sharp things accidentally is something that I find to be really awful to watch. So like Oculus, where she bites into a light bulb, and then also
Mike Flanagan is really fucking good with awful injuries.
Yeah, he fucking is.
And also Solo, eating glass in something else you wouldn't want to eat, but or no, it's not glass, it's nails. Anyway, sorry, Alexis, did you have fingernail examples that you wanted to talk about?
I can, like, in my mind's eye, see a fingernail being pulled off, but I don't remember what movie it was. But it was definitely, like, a torture scene where, like, somebody was getting, like, a fingernail, like, pulled off.
I can think of a movie that had some fingernail stuff.
Yeah.
If we're transitioning into this, I also, really quick, another thing that relates to this, decaying and picking away at yourself while you're still alive. Injuries.
Ooh,
so
what's that movie where like the water is all fucked up?
Is it the one that's like adapted from a Japanese horror movie? I vaguely
I'm not sure, but I very much remember like a scene where like a girl's like in the shower and like her skin is kind of starting to like peel off
Cabin
a little
Fever.
bit.
That's in Cabin Fever.
I was thinking of that one.
Movie
yeah,
Eli Roth getting some
Cabin Fever. Also,
oh my God.
Raw, the French movie, where there's so much like skin picking. How have you not seen that?
I don't know, especially since
how have you seen Fart
seen
the
that.
movie but not Raw?
Oh my God.
Listen,
Zach.
we contain multitudes.
Okay. Anyway, yes, we were going to, I assume, move on to talk about the actual movie since we're like 45 minutes in.
What about the fingernails?
A movie that has some pretty nasty fingernail stuff, which is also pretty upsetting to me because I lost several toenails as a kid, so like nail stuff is troubling to me, is David Cronenberg's 1986 sci-fi horror film, The Fly. When scientist Seth Brundle, Jeff Goldblum, completes his teleportation device, he decides to test its abilities on himself. Unbeknownst to him, a housefly slips in during the process, leading to a merger of man and insect. Initially, Brundle appears to have undergone a successful teleportation, but the fly's cells begin to take over his body. As he becomes increasingly fly-like, Brundle's girlfriend, Gina Davis, is horrified as the person she once loved deteriorates into a monster. So
They watched
really,
it.
Yeah.
Those very
Hits the
descriptive.
main beats, yeah.
Yeah.
This horror spooky season on the podcast is unofficially the Zack Harris Horror Mount Rushmore series. We are going to be talking about 4 directors who I think are top of the fucking horror heap. And I'm very excited that we are finally, after into the 3rd year of doing this podcast, talking about Mr. David Cronenberg. He had a movie that popped up on my best of 2022 list. He is the fucking granddaddy of body horror. He's the man. He's the myth. He's the legend. Edwin, you're our guest. Let's start with you. What are your feelings on The Fly? What's your relationship to it?
Yeah. Honestly, I think what's my backstory with The Fly question, I might need some Zach perspective on, because I feel like you have a much more granular memory of when we watched this movie with our family, I'm pretty sure.
We watched it with Dad at the vacation house in Canada.
When? What year?
I would have been 2012.
Okay, so you were starting high school and I was in mid high school. Yeah, and I think at the time I didn't have very much context for David Cronenberg and his body of work. So I found it to be an interesting movie, but I think it took me years of discovering other Cronenberg works and developing a very strong appreciation for him as a director to sort of come back to The Fly. And it took a while because I had remembered watching it with my family and seeing it as kind of a commercial horror movie that you can watch with your family. So not really in line with Cronenberg's other movies that I'm really drawn to, things like Shivers and Videodrome and Crash. So I had kind of dismissed The Fly in some ways as Cronenberg, doing something, I guess, for the money or for more popular acclaim. But last year it was showing in a theater where I live, and I went and saw it with an audience, and it was an extremely fun experience. People were very grossed out. The audience was really reactive. So as the body horror started getting more and more intense, you could hear people just going and that was so much fun. And I think watching that with an audience, I also recognized more of how it does express some of the, themes that are consistent throughout most of Cronenberg's work, and has a strong element of his voice as a writer and as a director. So yeah, that's my Fly spiel, I guess.
Fuck yeah. Alexis, your feelings on The Fly?
Well, I like it. I think I saw this a couple of years ago. I think Mick showed me this movie, maybe. I feel like this was something that we watched either at the apartment or at my place at some point.
The Troll Hole.
The Troll Hole, yes. Aw, I miss my Troll Hole. It's not quite the same with a house to yourself,
Yeah, you can walk around.
Yeah,
you can
walk
go to
around.
different rooms. You're not encased in darkness below some stairs.
I am feeling very attacked as someone who lives in a basement studio.
Yes.
I did not live in a basement studio, but I lived on one floor of a house that was sublet. So
and your
as
room
we
was
know, there are no basements in California.
Connected.
So
not a lot of basements in California. I was watching Zodiac this week.
No, my dad does have a basement though at his house.
Oh my god!
But he lives
Is
in
he
the
the
house.
Zodiac killer?
Oh my god. No, he lives in the only house on the block that it was owned by the guy who designed this whole like section of houses in this area. So he designed like the best house for himself. So he gave himself like a basement.
So maybe the guy who built the house.
Yeah, did the guy who built was he a like stocky white man with a crew cut
like
and
puzzles?
He was
glasses?
definitely a white man. So
Well, that's all we need to know.
All right,
remains to be seen, I guess.
Case closed. Your dad's house was built by the Zodiac, but the
Okay,
Fly.
so back to The Fly. I think I remember the first time I watched this being more upset by the body horror in this movie. And to preface, I've seen technically three other Cronenberg movies. I saw Rabid from the 70s or something.
That's like his second like feature commercially released film.
Yeah, it's from 1977. So I saw that back when we were still in college. And then I saw Crash a few years ago, and I fucking love Crash. I fuck with Crash hella heavy.
Yeah.
And then, did you say that you dislike it, Edwin?
No, I love Crash. I dislike that there was a much worse movie called Crash that then won an Oscar, like 11 years later or something, or 9 years later. So now whenever you say I like Crash, you have to say I like the 1996 like Cronenberg one.
You have to be like, I like Cronenberg.
Yeah, I have taste, so.
But yeah, no, I like The Fly. I found actually the body horror to be way less upsetting the second time around. I think it's just like, have I just been neutralized by body horror when it comes to Cronenberg in general? I don't know. I feel like there's certain things where it's like, once you've seen it, you just can't gross me out anymore unless it's bones.
Yeah, so for me, with the body horror stuff in this movie, once we're getting to, like, our ears are coming off, our jaw is getting knocked off, all of my flesh has turned into boils.
I'm turning into a fly puppet,
like, that doesn't really, I love it.
That's
I
just
love to
fun
see it. It makes me
hilarious.
happy.
Yeah, we love to see it.
But the couple of things that really trouble me in this movie are the arm break in the bar when he's arm wrestling with the guy is pretty bad.
With that daddy bear.
Oh, yeah. That's the only thing that I think is somewhat upsetting is like...
But the two that really bug me are his first tooth coming out is just like awful. It's awful.
Is the other one the finger pus?
The pus is okay, but when he pulls his first couple fingernails off, the tooth, one, I've had nail stuff happen, so that's upsetting to me. But his reaction after that, where he just goes, "What's happening? Am I dying?" Is like so naturalistic. It feels like a really real reaction to that. And it's like that I find very chilling. For me on this watch, what really jumped out at me, like I love this movie. The other potential big topic for this was most romantic horror movies. I think the relationship in this movie is very sweet. But what really jumped out to me on this watch is just how good Goldblum is in this. And I have to give some credit to Siskel and Ebert when this movie came out, because The Fly made it to number 9 on Siskel's list of best movies of the year. And Ebert was like a big proponent of this shouldn't just be nominated for makeup, which it did and was, I believe, won. But he was a champion of nominate Jeff Goldblum for Best Actor for The Fly, which I think is a cool take, because I think he's just incredible in this movie.
You want some behind the scenes info? Because I watched, I couldn't find all of this online, but I watched part of a making of documentary called Fear of the Flesh.
Please.
And part of it was pretty interesting. I wish I had been able to find the end of it, but I watched like the first hour, and they talked to Jeff Goldblum a fair bit about some of his like on-set prep work and like how he was approaching the character. And one thing he talked about was like really wanting to capture sort of the twitchy motion of the Fly, like physically as he becomes more Fly-like. So he would like drink a bunch of coffee on set, and he would also he was like, I know that I'm going to be like very exposed in parts of this movie. I'm going to be, you know, he's shirtless a lot, so he would like pump up, like do like weightlifting exercises and things, so he would be more like swole but also like highly energized to sort of capture.
He's so lanky.
Yeah, I mean he's not very swole compared to like a contemporary, you know, physique that we expect to see on like an A-list celebrity who's going to be doing like a body focus. You know, he doesn't look like one of the Marvel Chris's, but you know, he looks good.
Yeah. I think as he aged, he kind of bulked a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like this is my other thing that I noticed watching this movie is that this is the Mask of Zorro of 1986, where potentially
everyone's just like extremely sexy.
Potentially the two best looking people of that year are in a movie where they have a steamy relationship.
Yeah. Gina Davis is
maybe
so
becomes less
sexy
at points.
Her bone structure is so crazy.
This maybe doesn't like stay as sexy, but you
normally hate a perm. You know,
but she pulls it off.
She does. Yeah. I was just like, wow, you're just so. She looks like she's really soft. Yeah. I don't know if that's fucking weird to say. Is that like a Hannibal Lecter type of shit?
Alexis thinking about the flesh. Alexis covets the flesh.
Crazy for the flesh. She wants to pinch your cheek.
She's like, she bites him and she's like, I just kind of want to eat
that
you
part,
up.
That's such a good scene. That's such a good scene. Yeah, briefly back to Goldblum, though. The other thing that I thought was really interesting from this behind-the-scenes stuff was he said that he added and reworked a lot of his own dialogue. So the development process for The Fly was not smooth. There were like a few different writers who worked on the script. The original writer, let me see what his name was. I'd have to look back. It doesn't matter. Charles Edward Pogue had been the original scriptwriter and then was like replaced, and Cronenberg came on and did a bunch of rewrites once they hired him to direct, which is why it sounds like a Cronenberg movie. All the stuff about like, you know, the flesh, like that is obviously a Cronenberg trademark.
No director has ever used the word flesh more in
with such gusto.
Maybe no person has thought the word flesh more than David Cronenberg.
Yeah, but some of the sort of dialogue scenes and monologues that Seth Brundle has were not like fully finished in the script. There were parts where it just kind of trailed off, and Jeff Goldblum was able to sort of fill in and like go off the rails. So for example, that scene in the cafe where he's like dumping more and more sugar into his coffee and becoming more and more manic, and he has that really line that like I wrote down when I was taking notes on this movie, which is talking about for like waxing messianic, which is such a like great turn of phrase, and like that was a Goldblum line. So nice. So there's parts of it that are like him kind of not exactly ad-libbing, but it's like he helped to like fill in some of his own character dialogue.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I love him in this movie. I feel like him and Davis just have like such wonderful like chemistry in this.
It feels very natural.
They were dating when this movie was made.
There it is.
That's why it feels so natural.
Yeah, rock and roll.
Okay,
go off.
All right. Okay, Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, and Cronenberg was kind of like on the fence about casting because they cast Jeff Goldblum and then Gina Davis came in and read, and he kind of didn't want to cast her because they were in a relationship, and he was concerned about the potential for like issues stemming from that. But her audition was so good that they cast her anyway, which like how could you not? So
I'm always so impressed by how like clinically fucking efficient this movie is. It really goes to show that like unless you have an extremely good reason, your horror movie does not need to be more than like 100 minutes.
And that's like a Cronenberg guarantee.
Yeah, this movie just like it completely fleshes out this relationship. Introduces you to like the concept of how his teleportation thing works, and turns Jeff Goldblum into a whole ass fly man in 96 minutes. Like the fact that like the last moment of this movie is the saddest shot in any movie, the full like telepod Brundlefly lifting the shotgun up to his head. He gets shot. Gina Davis is crying. Cut to black. Get out of here. Like it is. This movie just fucking moves. There's not an ounce of fat on it.
Yeah.
I know. I forgot how concise it is when I threw it on, and then I was like, oh shit, this is only an hour 35. That's crazy. More movies should be like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is a romantic movie, and they do have great chemistry. One thing, though, I was kind of like thinking about watching this time was their like meet cute was, I don't know, it was kind of less cute to me on this watch. Maybe some of it is just like the context of how tech journalism has developed in recent years, and how like uncritical hype about new technology that turns out to be like either not what is promised or actively harmful has sort of become such an issue, and how like, you know, sort of access journalism relating to like personal relationships is also, you know, there's been some recent like big news stories like with whatever the reporter who was like sexting RFK Jr. while covering him, you know? So it's like thinking about those things. Sext me. I know. It's like, you know, yeah, they're having this cute flirtation, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, he is kind of a tech dumbass, you know?
A little bit. I love how he calls himself like a systems management guy. He's like, yeah, I basically like, I don't do anything, but I put together all these scenes. But then she finds out later that like, oh yeah, this guy like almost got nominated for like a Nobel Peace Prize like before the age of like 20, you know? Yeah. But I do love how he's just full of multitudes, because you come into his, I love how they get there. This is like right after they first meet, and he convinces her to like come home with him to like show her like the experiment or whatever it is that he has, right? And they come in, and and she's like, before they get into the apartment, she sees like the outside is this warehouse, and she's like, we're going here, and he's like, it's cleaner on the inside. And then they get in there, right? And it is, in fact, cleaner on the inside. It looks fine, whatever. But then this man, swear to fucking God, pulls a goddamn Ken movement, gets on this piano, and starts playing the piano to her. Yeah, and
I'm just play the piano at you now.
Canceled. This man's canceled immediately. And she's like, maybe I should leave.
Yeah. I do like, though, how they kind of communicate, like, the fact that they have sort of, like, a playful flirtation, like she's not that creepy. Creeped out is when he asks for something personal and she takes off her stocking and gives it to her, and like that's such a clear sort of way that it communicates that she feels like comfortable and is like kind of like charging the situation with sexuality like of her own volition.
Yeah, I don't wear jewelry.
Yeah. That's a very sexy scene. So one character we haven't really talked about, who I was thinking about on this watch, is Stathis.
The man I hate more than anyone.
That man with every ounce of my fucking being.
You want to talk about
Bloom, not charming, disgusting creep.
He's awful.
You want to talk about injuries that don't bother me one bit? Is when Stathis gets fucking melted by Brundlefly. I'm like,
I love acid melting scenes.
Do it.
Yeah.
And he deserved that. He absolutely deserved that shit. And okay. He has like a mini little redemption arc at the end of the movie, and I'm like, no, fucking die already. No one fucking likes you. This man is like, he's in Gina Davis's apartment taking a shower without her permission. I'm like, what a fucking creep is. And then he follows her into a department store and like tries to play it off as like all casual, and he's using like his position of power to like do weird things with like her story, right? right? But the fact that he follows her into this department store, pretends like he's shopping, and then like starts talking to her, and it starts to get like really possessive about the fact that she's buying fucking, oh my god, Brundle a jacket, and he starts, he almost has like a tantrum in the middle of the fucking department store. This is a fucking psycho.
This is a movie where male jealousy is several people's undoing, because
Brundle is getting drunk with a baboon and putting himself in the device.
Like, that is okay. That is, you did just describe like the coolest evening ever.
Yeah, typical
getting drunk
Friday.
with a baboon and putting myself in the device. Like, fucking, let's do it.
But one last thing, just about Stathis though, why I brought him up was in the making of documentary, they talk about how they like were like, oh well, there needs to be this like love triangle for there to be tension. I'm like, what love triangle? Like, there's the couple, and then there's
no
this
love triangle. This man is desperately trying to
like,
become a corner.
Yes. So I think
this guy we fucking hate.
Yeah. So I don't think they very successfully developed a love triangle, because, and I don't know, maybe if in the 80s, like, Stathis would have played less horrible to some audience members, but I just can't see how he's so like such a douchebag. I don't know.
I hate him.
Yeah, we all hate him. We all want him to be turned into fly slop. Get him out of here.
I will say though that I was also super upset with Jeff Goldblum, because this woman was about to go stand on her goddamn business and go take care of some shit on his behalf, and then this man just gets really drunk and he's like, oh man, I'm really jealous. She left in the middle of the night when we were going to get Chinese food to celebrate, even though we just were talking about doing things really romantic. She's obviously stepping out on me. And then he fucking puts himself into the teleportation device and ends up fucking scrambling his fucking genetics with that of a common housefly. And I'm like, well, you know, you also kind of deserve that because you're stupid.
Yeah, I guess this is where I kind of think about where this movie fits into the like broader body of Cronenberg's works, because I think there are parts of it that are more sort of playing to like a commercial audience and more conventional in their storytelling and in their morality than a lot of his other films. Because it's like, yeah, Brundle does make a particular bad choice that he really does know better than to do and could foresee terrible consequences from, and then like pays for that. So it's you know, kind of a classic like transgression and punishment situation. And a lot of Cronenberg's other works, there isn't necessarily as clear of like a fault or a proportional consequence to the thing that happens that initiates the events. So I think, you know, something like, I don't know, like Shivers. I mean, it's sort of initiated by like a mad scientist, but most of the characters who are like affected didn't do anything wrong. They're just there, and it's just sort of playing out in front of us as like an evolution of life, right? So I think Cronenberg tends to take a more detached view and a non-judgmental view in general of the things that are occurring in the movies that he makes, and The Fly is a little bit more like, you know, sort of typical in how it presents technology as a source of danger, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, that's okay. That absolutely plays into what I wanted to talk about a little bit, which is this is a movie about generative AI. This is a movie. Brundlefly is AI art. It's trying it's trying to reinterpret two things that it saw, and it's doing a fucking shit job. It's also just the fact that like computers are not creative. Computers are dumb. I like that this movie really hammers that home. I think one of
the illustrative, maybe you're.
I was just gonna say one of the biggest laughs in this movie, I think, is when he's, you know, getting sick and he's like trying to figure out what happened to him, and it's like there's a second element that was in the telepod with him, and he types in, "What is secondary element?" and the computer replies, "Secondary element is not Brundle."
Not Brundle.
And for a little behind the scenes peek, on my Hulu, there are two users. One is Zach and one is not Zach, and that is Edwin.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I also have something on my Hulu that is Alexis and not Alexis. There's a couple other profiles, but one of them is definitely just not Alexis.
Yeah, I think there's a good demonstration, right, of like, you know, when you're programming, you're telling a computer to do what to do, and it only does exactly what you tell it to do. It cannot make any sort of like logical leaps or inferences about your intentions. So if you don't ask specifically enough, then yes, you will get the answer, not Brundle. And if you don't set things up specifically enough, you will end up as the Brundle fly. So
dot your I's and cross your T's.
Yeah, I do love drunk. His quote, though. Can I say it?
Yes.
Okay. He says, "I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man, and I loved it, but now the dream is over, and the insect is awake."
That's my Instagram bio.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Shut up. Is that your Instagram bio?
Yeah. Can we say what the user is? Cronenberg.
Yeah, at Cronenberg. If you want to see pictures of bugs that I took photographs of in the field,
if you want to know if you're ever fucking doubting Edwin's expertise for the Fly episode, don't.
Yeah, there are some really great quotes in this movie, though. There's some really funny quotes. I love the line of, like, my medicine cabinet has become the Brundle Museum of Natural History. Like,
yeah,
that's
it's just like his ear and his like fingernails. Oh, well,
here's the thing about dialogue from this movie. I didn't realize this, but the quote "be afraid, be very afraid," like, people just say that, right? And I thought that this was her using, like, you know, a turn of phrase that's common. No, that came from The Fly, and it was referring back to last episode. It was the tagline for this movie that became, this movie was a big hit, and that tagline became very, like, culturally ubiquitous, and it now has, like, taken on a life beyond this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, the phrase "be afraid, be very afraid" is from The Fly.
I don't like that. As
I don't either, really, but I just find it interesting.
That is interesting.
I thought that was, when I saw that as a tagline for this movie, because we were, you know, I was looking up best taglines. I was like, that's kind of a lame tagline for The Fly. That's literally just like a fucking cliche. But no, it invented the cliche.
Yo, when he says, like, the computer got confused and it spliced us together, it mated us, and we hadn't even been properly introduced, that was really funny. That got a laugh from me, for sure.
Yeah.
I also love when he says the like, "I've got one magic word for you," and she's like, "Yeah," and then he just goes, he puts his hands in front of her face, he goes, "Cheeseburger," and then you cut to them in the diner, and I don't know, there's something somewhat charming about this man.
He's Jeff Goldblum. He's got the strangest riz.
It's true, and it's like
the strangest riz.
Yeah, his whole like, I'm an engineer who, like, never goes outside and who, like, wears literally the same clothes every day, so I don't have to pick my clothes. Like, that plays a lot better when you are, like, 1986 Goldblum, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of, like, what that guy actually looks like in real life.
I'm not 100% certain that I love his hair in this movie.
His hair is very 80s in, like,
it's very 80s.
a
I don't love
dated way.
It, but
yeah. It is luscious. It is impressive.
It is luscious, yes.
Yeah, and it gets much more powerful as he turns into a fly man. I did like his little bit about developing, like, the coarse hairs on his back. He's just like, I've always been too boyish. I want to enjoy my new hairy body. And, like,
let me tell you, as a man with some fucking serious back hair, I pull them out. I have angel wings of back hair. It's weird.
You know, I have this, like, weird thought about, like, you know how he's like, "Oh, do you want to come see the," like, obviously I feel like if you were in this situation, you would probably be horrified by what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. It is scary, but I would be intrigued by the medicine.
I'd
cabinet.
take a look.
I would want to see the medicine. I would want to see the Natural History Museum of Grendel.
Take a little peek.
I'm like, I'll just take a peek.
Yeah.
I'll take a peek. You know.
But also thinking about kind of the characters' reactions and how. This is a romantic movie and it's a tragic movie. And a lot of that comes from seeing, this couple where, you can swap out the concept of someone turning into a giant fly and swap in any kind of like real life tragedy of, like a health issue or addiction or whatever that causes someone you love to undergo these like uncontrollable changes that you can't do anything to stop. But I think the fact that the characters react in a sort of naturalistic way that causes you to feel a lot of pity for them is also kind of off-brand for Cronenberg for me, or it's a different approach than you see in a lot of his other films. Like I think of Videodrome, for example, which was probably his biggest, one of his other biggest movies of the body horror genre. And in Videodrome, the protagonist, it develops a brain tumor, right? And he hears about this, and he's just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't really have any kind of... He's not alarmed by it.
It's not
Maybe
the tumor.
it's the tumor causing him to not be alarmed by itself, and he's been, like, re-engineered into, the individual that he's becoming. But it's, like, a lot of the time... One of the things in Cronenberg movies that's notable is like the people undergoing the transformations are not as disgusted or alarmed by what's happening to them as you might expect, or maybe are like not particularly alarmed at all. And the Fly, I think it's like, it's a more expected reaction to like, my body is breaking down for unknown reasons. Like, am I dying? What's happening to me?
Edwin, you and I were talking about why The Substance maybe doesn't have huge Cronenberg vibes, and that might be one of the aspects of it where it's not super Cronenberg because Elizabeth...
she never tries to have sex with her own clone body, so it's not a Cronenberg to me.
That is true. He will take it.
He would have recognized the eroticism inherent in creating a younger version of yourself that vampirically like drains the life out of you. Spoilers for The Substance. Sorry.
I feel like...
Yeah, I feel like that movie is Cronenberg. Like, okay, this is a weirdly specific gripe, but you know that episode of Rick and Morty where they go to a planet of Cronenberg's, quote unquote? The stuff in that episode is a lot more like John Carpenter's The Thing. People need to stop using Cronenberg-esque to just refer to like any sort of
any practical
flesh mass amalgamation, because there's different kinds. They're not all the same.
That is
They're not all the same if you care.
And I do.
Yeah.
And I do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Oh, you know who else deserves a shout out with this movie? Which he was already given a shout out by John Mulaney. But Mel Brooks, previously covered director Mel Brooks, produced this movie. And you won't see his name in the credits on this movie. And that's because Mel Brooks asked to have his name taken off of this movie so that people wouldn't get confused and think like, oh, is it a comedy? Because he was like such a brand, which I think is like... Yeah, a very cool move. And like, if I was involved with the development of The Fly, I would want my name on it because this movie rips. So I don't know. That feels like a very kind of like selfless, cool move.
You want to know who else was involved in this movie?
Oh, you had. Yes, you were teasing this to me.
This name might not mean anything to you by itself. Robert Bierman was originally
I don't know the significance of this.
Connected to this project. Do you want to know what else he directed?
What?
Vampire's Kiss.
Yo!
Yes!
Alexis.
It's an incredible film.
Oh, yeah. Vampire's Kiss is... Have you ever seen the clip of Nicolas Cage where he's like, I've never misfiled anything. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Yeah, any like big like...
No, I wish I had.
Yeah,
Vampire's Kiss is one of the great Nick Cage movies.
Yeah, any of those compilations of like Cage freakout moments is going to have multiple from Vampire's Kiss. It is a horror comedy, I guess, that's how I would classify it, as about a man who thinks he's turning into a vampire. So it's really fascinating. It's an incredible Nicolas Cage performance.
He describes
really
that movie.
stuff.
He describes that movie as his lab.
Yes, it is really. It's a great key for unlocking the many mysteries of Nicolas Cage and his acting style. But yes, so that guy was originally attached to the project, but his daughter died in a tragic accident. So he dropped off. So I guess that freed him up later to do Vampire's Kiss. So maybe it all worked out. Probably not for his career, honestly, though.
Well, if we're
saying The Fly versus Vampire's Kiss,
but for culture at large,
I think it worked out for culture at large. And then Cronenberg was got onto the project off of a different movie you guys talked about, which was Total Recall.
Oh yeah, Cronenberg.
Yeah, because that fell apart, and that's why he was able to come on and do The Fly.
Which again comes back to everything comes back to Dan O'Bannon.
Not a real guy.
He is a real guy. He wrote
the name
Alien.
Sounds like a fake name.
It's a real guy.
All right.
But I feel like that. Yeah, him as like a writer, I feel like low-key has just been like one of the most influential people on sci-fi genre stuff throughout the 70s and 80s.
Some other really influential people who were involved in this movie specifically, I think one who's a crew member who could be noted is Mark Irwin, the cinematographer. He's a Cronenberg regular, so he also did Scanners and Videodrome and The Dead Zone, and he also went on to do Scream.
I still need to see The Dead Zone and also Fuck Yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about his sort of like philosophy of lighting horror movies, where like it's scarier if you start out in the light and then you turn it off, so that like you don't want to have it at the sort of high contrast from the beginning. You don't want to hide everything in shadows forever. You want to start out where people can kind of get a sense of the geography of the space, and then you start to like make it more obscured and more kind of like shrouded in darkness. And you see that in this movie, where like in the scenes where it's more romantic and light, the lighting is very different from toward the end of the movie, where it's like you're in Dracula's castle toward the end.
Yeah, this movie, like, talking about the space, this, like, even though I'm sure this movie was very expensive because you have to do all that fly makeup. They
had to give him $1 million to bring him on in the 80s, so.
Cronenberg?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He had some fucking pull.
Yeah.
I do think this movie is just like such a testament, though, to like how cheap horror can be, because like even in a movie like this that is so like effects heavy, it even like at this like big studio level, we still keep it down to like one really well designed set for most of the movie. Like we occasion, like, we'll pop into like a restaurant here or an office there, but like the only set that's like really like heavily designed and like clearly cost a ton of money is the lab. And we get our fucking money's worth out of that lab set.
And I think another thing you see is in some of the outdoor scenes, as is the case in many Cronenberg movies from this era, like a lot of the setting he's doing is really beautiful, like shot selection of locations in Toronto. So like that publisher's building. What was the publisher building name? It was like such a Cronenberg-y.
The magazine is Particle Magazine, which I love.
Monolith Publishing. So there's that like huge kind of like concrete building with like the big beautiful windows, and like he loves a brutalist building, and he loves to like shoot the city of Toronto like it is like simultaneously like a different dimension and also like a post-apocalyptic landscape, but also like the distant future and the post and a post-Soviet country all at once. Like Toronto is where Cronenberg did a lot of filmings. If you don't know, he is one of the most famous Canadian horror directors and most famous Canadian directors, and Canadian film funding is really what gave us his career. But that helps, I think, a lot with the cost of the movie, because I'm sure it's a lot cheaper, especially back then, to shoot in Toronto.
That remains my favorite thing about
that Canadian
Cronenberg
government
is the fact
money
that
being
there's
put
so
to
much
good use.
money that's getting funded by
the
Canadian government for his movies.
And
that his movies can be so divisive, with the body horror aspect, and yet the Canadian government is just like, well, you're our most well-known guy, so we're just going to keep giving you money.
Probably less at this stage.
You're our guy.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think especially earlier on, when he was more reliant on Canadian sort of whatever tax write-offs and funding sources. His first movie, Shivers, was released under an alternate title of I think it was Orgy of the Blood Parasites. I guess that just kind of tells you the tone of how that was marketed. So the fact that taxpayer dollars went into that for an unknown director at that stage, before he had any clout, is kind of amazing. That whole there's a bunch of movies, Cronenberg is the best known director that came out of that, but there were other movies made in a similar way at that time period that get lumped under a subgenre descriptor that I kind of object to, which is Canucksploitation. So there's movies I think The Pit and Cannibal Girls, and there's a few that are low budget 70s ones. I don't like the term, because to me blank exploitation should tell
it's
you
exploiting
what the
Canadian
movie is actually
government
about.
money.
A nunsploitation movie is about nuns. It's not a mystery. But a Canucksploitation is not exploiting the concept of Canada. It just was made through this particular tax process that existed in Canada by Canadian creatives.
Who else deserves a shout out?
I wish it was exploiting Canadians. I wish it was all just hockey teams, but no. So. Also, Denise Cronenberg, who did the costume design and is David Cronenberg's is David Cronenberg's sister. There were a lot of Cronenberg regular collaborators on this movie that he brought on with him, which is typical for how he liked to work.
Yeah, shout out Cronenberg as the abortion doctor.
Gynecologist.
Yeah,
the actual abortion doctor that she goes to see in the movie is another Cronenberg regular actor. He's the guy who played Brian Oblivion in Videodrome. So there's a few.
I almost chose Videodrome for my sci-fi September pick, but
I love Videodrome so much. It's
but then I was I guess I'll let Zach, because he said he was going to pick a Cronenberg for his month. So I was I guess I'll let you have it, since that is your boy. And then I chose Lars von Trier. Whatever. That is not my boy.
You don't claim him.
I don't claim him. I really like Melancholia, but I don't claim that man. Do we have closing thoughts then, since Zach's having technical issues?
Zach, say your final thoughts before you die.
I love The Fly. It's the most romantic horror movie, the saddest horror movie. It's some of the greatest makeup effects ever put to film. Very, very well-deserved Oscar win. And I really I've got to shout out the score on this movie, because it comes in. There's one moment. It's right after Goldblum's blow up about how you only know society's sick, sad line about the flesh, and then he walks out, and Howard Shore's score just goes fucking bananas. I love this film. And before we leave, here are mixed thoughts on The Fly.
I absolutely adore this movie. I'm going to try to make my thoughts as succinct and clear as possible, but forgive me because I am still kind of coming out of this odd surreal fugue state that I've been in since watching Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, but I'll get into that on the next episode during What's Going On. The Fly. I adore this movie, and I applaud Zach for picking this to kick off spooky season. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm sure Edwin and Zack and Alexis have already said so many wonderful things about this movie that there's not a lot that I can probably add. I'm sure they've also said some things that are just absolutely atrocious because I can always rely on them to say the wrong stuff. So I'll try to correct whatever they fucked up here. But I love this movie. It's so good. I watched it when I was far too young. In fact, actually, I think I watched the original film first with Vincent Price. It's a bit of a silly sci-fi B horror film, but I liked it as a kid, and so I think my father then showed me this film. And I remember after Seth Brundle has gone through the teleportation and he's been gene spliced with the titular fly, he wants to then send Veronica, played by Gina Davis, through the teleportation. But you know what? She's not going to do it because she's a fucking drag. And he goes out with his Butterfinger, goes to the bar, and he sees Mark. He starts arm wrestling this guy for $100 and also to take this lady of the night home. And when he gets the compound fracture, and his wrist just pops open, I absolutely lost it as a kid. For the rest of the movie, for what I could handle, I was watching the film through the cracks of my little hands covering my face. And then when it got to the scene where Veronica has come back after he has desperately called her that the last couple of weeks I've been trying to hide from you, and now I don't think I cannot see you. He vomits this breakdown enzyme onto his donut, and then his ear falls off. That I couldn't watch anymore of. That was too much for little Mick, too much body horror for me, and then I had to then shut it off. But years later, I then returned to it, and I'm so glad I did, because this is absolutely deserving of the title of body horror classic. I think this is arguably David Cronenberg's best film. At least it's his most accessible. I think it's a great allegory, and I think David Cronenberg himself has even said that they talked about cancer as a sort of metaphor here. Or I know a lot of people have talked about this as an allegory for the AIDS virus and disease that just it's completely violating. We talking about external force, external fear. You can hide from it. You can try to protect yourself from it, but something within that consumes you within is almost the ultimate nightmare scenario. And I think that's why this is one of the best body horror films, because literally bits and pieces are falling off of him. He keeps this collection of his former body parts in his medicine cabinet. It's absolutely disgusting and terrifying and tragic. The special effects, we have to applaud. And in fact, I'm so happy to learn that the Academy Awards awarded this best makeup effects for the year, because it's absolutely deserving of it. It is so fantastic. Seeing the slow progression of Seth Brundle into Brundlefly is just absolutely terrifying and disgusting. And I think what's so good about it is it's 50% makeup. For a creature effect, it has to be 50% makeup, but also 50% performance. And Jeff Goldblum as Brundlefly is so good. I think on this rewatch for this episode, I was especially taken by his unhuman-like twitching of the body and his body language and the licking of his lips and the twitching of his eyes. Jeff Goldblum nails it as Brundlefly, but he also nails it as Seth Brundle too. This sort of geeky, sexy, suave, tall scientist. I mean, he absolutely popularized that, I think 6 or 7 years later in Jurassic Park, but he did it first here, and he is just so perfectly cast. Gina Davis is Veronica. She's absolutely wonderful. I think this movie says a lot about jealousy, because you have Stathis Born, played by John Getz, who is a fascinating character, because originally, I mean, he's really disgusting. Stathis is such a fucking creep, but then in a way you almost end up rooting for the guy once he gets the shotgun and he actually is helping Veronica out and he's helping her get an abortion so that she doesn't have to birth out this maggot creature. You also get pregnancy horror in this too. Really great characters. I think it says a lot about jealousy as well, that jealousy kind of eats you alive. There's a lot of jealousy happening. There's basically a lot of dipshit men in this movie, if you think about it. But yeah, the makeup is absolutely fantastic. The great creature effects. But I think something that really sells the creature effects, and I'll try to wrap things up here quickly, is the gymnastics scene. So right after Seth Brundle has gone through the teleportation and he sleeps with Veronica and he wakes up and he catches that fly, showing that his reflexes are now almost superhuman. He goes out and he begins performing marvelous and mind-boggling feats of strength and agility. So much so that it's almost hard to believe and hard to fathom that a human being's actually doing that. Now, someone actually is. They got a extremely talented body double or stunt double to perform those things. And I feel like Gina Davis, while I'm watching it, she comes out and she's watching it in just shock and awe. She's impressed, but almost terrified. And seeing an actual actor on film perform something that seems so impossible and unhuman completely sells the body horror that is to come. And that's why I think that might be my favorite scene, because you're already beginning to get terrified of what he's capable of. And then as everything falls apart or falls off of him, you also know that he is super powerful and he can crawl on the ceiling. And that's another great scene. I absolutely love this movie. And I think it should be considered an all-time classic just because of the line, the poetry of steak. When he realizes that the computer is not breaking down the flesh, take a shot every time someone says flesh in this movie. You get absolutely shit-faced. When he realizes the computer is not breaking down organic matter enough because it does not fully understand the poetry of steak, it's so true. I could have told it that. I think that's why we collectively do not need to worry about AI taking over, because AI will never understand the poetry of steak.
My closing thoughts on The Fly is that I love the sex scene between them, like once he has been spliced with the fly, and then like they're going like supposedly like for hours or something, and she's like, no, Seth, I have to stop. But it just looked like, I don't know, they looked so good together, but like, I don't know, there was like multiple times where like you just kind of see them like in bed together, and I guess it makes sense that they were dating at the time, but it just, like I said before, it looks so natural, and it just really kind of breaks your heart at the end when he takes, you know, the shotgun and just like puts it up to his face, you know. My last closing thought is fuck Stathis. I never liked you. I never will. I'm so glad that your fucking foot fell off and your hand was eaten away by insect acid. You deserved it. And you deserve nothing good in life.
Yeah, he really was a pig of a man, and like not in a kind of
Truly.
like charming Cronenberg scumbag kind of way. Like I don't know. I find Max in Videodrome to be like a similar kind of character, but he comes across a lot more charming, despite James Wood being an IRL freak. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Fly is a good like tasting menu of Cronenberg. If you haven't seen a lot of his movies, I think it's a little more approachable than something like, I don't know, like Crash or Dead Ringers. Some of them get a little, or even some of his older movies that have a pacing that's a little bit more sedate. You think of something like The Brood. Like this one zips along. It feels very Hollywood, but it still has some of those like very nasty creative touches in the effects, and also some of the like poetic flourishes in the script that are really like staples of what makes Cronenberg a very, you know, influential and unique director, and a voice in the horror space. It's not my favorite Cronenberg movie, but I do like it a lot. And I guess one closing thing I'll plug for anyone who's like interested in this potentially, which would be a very niche audience, but at some point in the next few months I should be having an article published in American Entomologist about entomologist characters in horror movies. So I don't talk about The Fly because he is not an entomologist. But even though this is probably the most famous like insect science fiction horror movie, it doesn't count for the scope of the paper that I am going to be writing. But I don't know, at some point that'll be out and people can check it out to read about some very like weird niche movies, mostly from the 50s in the sort of atomic horror age, and then some of the like post discovering that DDT is actually a very dangerous chemical for the environment. 70s movies, there's some pretty interesting ones that kind of are touching on the sort of ecological horror of pesticide impacts. So anyway, that's my piece that I have to say for myself. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Very cool. Zach, do you want to tell us where we're heading next?
Yes, I will tell you where we're heading next. I'm just gonna keep talking because I know I'm on a fucking lag. I'm just gonna keep going. So this next episode, we will be discussing.
Wow, you're really chugging there.
A director who we have covered once before, but never in the horror genre. We are going to be talking about Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell. I love it. It rules. I can't wait to talk about it. And if you are looking for Drag Me to Hell, you can find it on Prime or Philo TV, whatever the fuck that is. Yeah, you can find it in the void where I live. And you can also find it on the shelf. And if you would like to find us, the Film Majors, you can find us at Film Majors Pod on Instagram Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok. You can find us on YouTube at the Film Majors. Like, comment, subscribe. Yeah.
Zach has been dragged to hell, and he's no longer on the call.